All right, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of the GIS conference. This is the 1 o'clock session. Parcel fabric complying with tax map submission standards. My name is David Giordano. I'm the session moderator for this half-hour session. And joining us to do the presentation is Amanda Patton. Amanda has 3 years of experience in GIS creation and design with an emphasis. Sorry about that. Amanda Patton has 3 years of experience with GIS creation and design with an emphasis on land records and tax maps. Her expertise includes maintaining GIS geodatabases, maintaining parcel data, creating tax maps, and managing replicated databases for multi-user editing. So Amanda, go ahead and take it away, please.
Thank you, David. Hi, everyone, and welcome to my presentation. Thank you for joining me. As David said, my name is Amanda Patton, and today I'm going to be talking about the parcel fabric and how we used it to comply with New Jersey tax map submission standards. David told you a lot about me already. I'm a GIS specialist at Mazer Consulting. I have over 3 years experience in GIS data creation and design with an emphasis on land records and creating tax maps. My expertise include creating and maintaining GIS geodatabases, managing parcel data, creating tax maps, and managing replicated databases for multi-user editing. I have bachelor degrees in geographic information systems, planning, and geography, all from Rowan University. I'll first give you a little background on tax maps. Property taxation in the US dates back to the original Pilgrims at Plymouth, Massachusetts. They created laws regarding taxes and assessments of a fort that they built. The first tax mapping originated in the 1670s in Boston, and it listed assets and values. Tax maps used to be hand-drawn on linen, and then this later progressed into Mylar. Both of these had the risk in decline of durability and readability, because they could rip or smudge very easily. There was also the risk of human error. Since they were drawn by hand in the field, this could skew the courses. And paper maps, they took up a lot of space, having to keep all the copies and revisions in paper form. The New Jersey Division of Taxation has very prescriptive standards, so much so that they have a manual of standards that is very specific. It outlines things like the line thickness, the text sizes, and how things should appear in various situations, such as condos or paper streets, vacated streets, water bodies, easements, and so much more. But the Book of Standards keeps consistency between all of the tax maps of the 565 municipalities of New Jersey. Tax map submissions are usually CAD submissions. Tax maps in New Jersey were typically prepared using CAD software, but we are using GIS technology to meet the state requirements while also updating the land records, which were out of date. Having the parcels in GIS will make the process of maintaining these records so much easier. The tax maps that we created were for the city of Elizabeth, New Jersey. Elizabeth is one of the largest cities in New Jersey. It has almost 130,000 people, and it covers almost 13.5 square miles. The final tax map for the city included almost 20,000 parcels and 234 tax map sheets. Elizabeth is a very diverse city. It has everything from small streets to industrial facilities, retail and commercial areas, parks, highways, railroads, the Elizabeth River, the port, and an airport. The top left image is of a 1930 set of tax maps. The top right image is an aerial view of the airport and the port of Elizabeth. The landscape of New Jersey is ever-changing, and there's new development everywhere you look. So keeping accurate property records is essential. It's important to maintain these tax maps with as much accuracy and consistency as possible so that property owners can be properly taxed. Using GIS for tax maps is a relatively new concept, but there are a lot of benefits that come with it. The first one I'll mention is accuracy. They're not hand-drawn, so you don't have to worry about the risks associated with that. Another is practicality. They're stored digitally, printed when necessary, and they can therefore take up less physical space because you don't have to keep all of the copies. They can create a seamless parcel data set for an entire town. You can use attributes to keep information about the parcels. You can then use that information to search for parcels, and you can link it to other databases. Since it's in GIS, we have it georeferenced, so you can turn on an aerial and see what's there, or you can add other data to your map to see how it relates to your parcels. Using GIS also allowed for us to use version databases, which allows multiple simultaneous editors. And having the land records in GIS lends itself to current web GIS as well, such as asset management. Just an overview of the parcel fabric. It is made up of points, lines, and polygons. It is a continuous surface of connected parcels, or a parcel network. The picture on the left is what the parcel fabric looks like in your table of contents. You'll notice that we were using ArcMap instead of ArcPro. This was because when we started this project in 2017, the parcel fabric tools in ArcGIS Pro were not fully rolled out yet. Some of the benefits of the parcel fabric are that it offers a way to maintain a seamless surface of connected parcels in one data set. So there are no gaps or spaces, and it has a more accurate scale. Another benefit is historic parcels. As lots are consolidated or subdivided, the original lot is given an end date, and it is stored within a historic parcel layer of the parcel fabric. This allows us to see what an area was like before a major subdivision or change. And when redevelopment is always occurring, like it is in New Jersey, this is a very important tool. In the image on the right, you can see that the red hatched area is now a historic lot because it was subdivided into 2 new lots. The parcel fabric also allows us to relate each parcel to a plan, which is the legal recorded document that describes the parcel. It stores this information in the plan directory. When documents containing specified survey points are available, they can be used as control points to build the parcel fabric around that specified known point. Control points are defined by X and Y coordinates. They're more accurate than the parcel fabric points, and for that reason, they may not always match the parcel fabric point. Adding more control points will continually improve the positional accuracy. Using these points incrementally across the city can help to improve the accuracy of the entire data set. Our workflow was developed with Esri, and it consisted of some preliminary drafting and georeferencing of the tax map, which was completed in CAD. And then the raw CAD data was migrated to GIS, cleaned up, and converted to polygons. The GIS attributes were then populated and the data was polished. Some of the attributes that we included were the block numbers, the lot numbers, and the sheet numbers. All of this was done prior to preparing the individual tax map sheets. The left image is showing some of the important attributes that you see when a parcel is selected. Some of the software that we used includes ArcGIS Desktop, Enterprise GIS, AutoCAD Civil 3D, Nearmap, and ViewWorks. Here are some of the main geoprocessing tools that we used during this project. I'm only going to get into the details of a few of them, but feel free to contact me if you have any questions or want me to go into more detail or want more information about the other ones. We used feature class to feature class to get the lines from CAD to GIS. We used make a feature and feature to point to get the annotation from CAD to GIS and then use it as attributes for the parcels. Topology rules were used to clean up the lines and ensure that they close so that they would create polygons. And spatial joins were used to help us assign the block and lot numbers to the parcels. The City of Elizabeth was hand drawing updates to a 1930 set of tax maps. And there were about 30 years of updates that needed to be made from when the CAD tax maps were created. The old 1930 set of tax maps had different block and lot numbers than the CAD set had. And the city wanted to update their parcels and their tax assessment database so that they had the same numbers from the CAD set. This required us to create a cross-reference database of the old and new numbers in the tax assessment database. Properties that required updates had to be located by comparing the two tax map sets, and then the edits were applied to the new parcels that we created in GIS. Edits were made to the parcel fabric based on filed deeds. Numerous updates and edits needed to be made to the parcels, so it made sense that multiple people would work on them to get them done in a timely manner. So we use versioning of an SDE database and replication to allow for multiple editors. The image on the left here shows an example of what our version database could look like. There were several different types of edits that needed to be made to the parcels. One being subdivisions. So in that case, we could use a construct from parent, and from there we would add a parallel offset or a break line, depending on if the subdivision was simple or complex. Sometimes there were consolidations in which we would merge two or more parcels together. And sometimes the CAD line work was just inaccurate and we would need to transform the parcels. In this case, we would take one of the points, like a vertice, and adjust it. And since this is in the parcel fabric, this would in turn move that parcel line that shared the vertice. And this is how the seamless parcel network is maintained in the parcel fabric. In the case of completely new areas, we would have to create a new parcel. The image on the right, but the left image, is showing how some of the editing tools are accessed in the parcel fabric. You can just right click on it and a few of the options come up there. If you wanted to access the transform or new parcel options, you can use the parcel fabric editing toolbar. The image on the right just shows a list of some of the different types of tax map updates that we had to perform during this project. So there were subdivisions, consolidations, we had to add easements, street vacations, revise some of the railroad properties, expand roadways. There was a lot. Creating the actual tax map sheets. The image here is of a tax map sheet that I created for the City of Elizabeth. This is what the final sheets look like. Each sheet had its own MXD. There are 234 sheets plus an index sheet and 6 key sheets. New Jersey has a unique requirement for how tax maps need to be displayed based on block limits, such as the right-of-way, where the rest of the world uses a grid form. In the image shown here on the bottom of the sheet, there are lots that continue in each of those blocks, but they aren't shown on this sheet. They are shown on the connecting sheet. So part of the regulations in New Jersey, you can't have duplicate parcels on separate sheets. So definition queries were used to ensure that we were only showing those parcels that were necessary on that sheet and prevent showing the same lot on duplicate sheets, 'which would not be in compliance of the division standards. Without attributes, definition querying would not be possible. Sheet boundaries were created to clip the extents of what would be shown in the data frame and provide a buffer between where the lines of the data end and where the sheet border is. And Python scripting was used to create PDFs of all the MXDs without having to individually open each document and export it to a PDF. We faced a number of project challenges that we had to overcome through this process. One was that we cannot display a full grid map, so attributes and definition queries were used to limit the data that was shown on each sheet. Another was the updating of the block and lot numbers. They have changed since the 1930s, and they switched over to a new numbering system, and these had to match up to the block and lot numbers that were in the tax assessment database. So we had to create a cross-reference database between the two. There was also a lot of properties that weren't identified up to the state standards, but the attributes and cross-reference list helped us identify these missing properties. We were able to join the tables and find the properties that didn't have matches, and your list of parcels needs to match your tax assessment database as part of the regulations as well. Using GIS helped us to clean up their assessment database, which allowed us to assist the city's tax assessor with identifying and resolving any issues that may have existed inside of their tax assessment database. This was a really big job, and there was a lot of work to do on a tight timeline. We used versioning to allow for multiple editors to speed up this process. Some other benefits to using GIS for tax maps is that you can then use that GIS data that we created in other ways. You can use the joins to link the parcel data to the tax assessment database, which contains owner information, property information, tax information, and other things. You can overlay other data such as flood data. The flood hazard lines actually need to be on the tax maps, so that was very beneficial in our case. You can also overlay data for other purposes not related to tax maps, such as wetlands, zoning data, voting districts. Having the parcels in GIS will now allow us to use them for asset management, such as property upkeep through ArcGIS Online, Survey 123, Operation Dashboard, and others. We have the data served into ViewWorks, which is an Esri partner that offers off-the-shelf eGIS asset management programs that the city is currently being trained on by our staff to access their tax map data. GIS should be the new and improved standard for creating tax maps, in my opinion. Before I wrap it up, I wanted to reiterate that this was all done in ArcMap. At the Esri user conference this past summer, I got the chance to virtually attend some Parcel Fabric presentations, all of which focused on the Parcel Fabric in Pro. So I just wanted to now share why I'm excited to hopefully be able to use the Parcel Fabric in Pro, like I did for the City of Elizabeth in ArcMap with another town. The Parcel Fabric is now fully supported in Pro. When we started this project in late 2017, it was not yet. So that's why ArcMap was used. It utilizes record-driven workflows. So when you make an edit, you create a record to store all of the information associated with that record in the parcels that are involved in that record are all linked there. You can go back into your records to see which parcels were involved. The record name is stored in the parcels as well. Each parcel can have a record that created it and a record that retired it if it is a historic parcel, like if there was a subdivision there. I feel like this is so helpful for organizational purposes, and it will also help people to be able to understand what happened in a certain location over the years. There also seem to be some updated ways to perform edits and maintain data in Pro, which all seem very user-friendly and easy to use. There are a number of workflows that Esri has created that can be utilized to automate frequent processes, and these can be personalized to meet your needs. You can have multiple parcel types with their own attribute fields and topology rules. This will be very useful for tax lots, blocks, easements, and municipal boundary lines, just to name a few. There's even built-in quality management. So topology is incorporated in it, so it can be viewed as you edit parcels, so all the errors don't pile up and you don't need to handle them all at the end. Another new thing is the branch versioning, which allows the parcel fabric to be added to the web through Portal. People outside of the company or the network can then view and edit easily. You also don't have to periodically compress or rebuild indexes or analyze data sets like we had to do while we were versioning for the City of Elizabeth project. The ability to draw by meets and bounds is very exciting and simple to use as well. I've actually used this function for the Parcel Fabric in Pro for another project. We needed to be able to draw easements on parcels based on a deed that contained a meets and bounds description. And we already had the GIS parcels. So I simply loaded the parcels to the parcel fabric and created a new parcel type for easements and began creating records and drawing easements using the traverse tool and the parcels as a reference for the starting point on the deed. If you couldn't tell, the parcel fabric makes me pretty excited, and it has been so fun talking to you guys. Thank you for listening.
All right, Amanda, thank you. It was really informative. As you were giving your presentation, I jotted down a couple of questions
Okay.
that came to mind immediately, but it looks like you answered most of them later on in the presentation. But there was one that I didn't hear, or maybe you did expound on it, but if you could do so now. Back to the database slides you had. I mean, how frequently did you edit and reconcile post the edits back to the base? And were you doing that with Python?
I was not doing it with Python. I looked into it, but I couldn't learn it fast enough to where we needed it working. So I kind of just did it manually. Depending on the number of edits that I made per week, I would usually do it at the end of the week. I would post them back to the default database. Yeah, usually once per week, I would say.
And you mentioned Pro and that you were using ArcMap when you were going through this. Have you since looked at Pro to perform this parcel stuff?
So I used Pro in another way to do the easements. I haven't used it to actually create a parcel fabric yet. We haven't gotten a project to do that yet, unfortunately, but I'm always looking out for that. Ready to use Pro for parcel fabric, definitely. But
Right.
It's been very helpful for doing the easements and using the traverse tool to plot by meets and bounds in there.
A couple of comments in the chat. From reading them, it looks like you were in the NCPMA SIG yesterday.
Yes, I was.
And Rich Elkins provided a comment. He said some counties may still print out tax maps from GIS based on the older grid map system or some other scheme, but most no longer do that. They just maintain cadastral records in their GIS without regard to prior map boundaries and designated scales.
Okay, yeah, that's.
And then, yeah, similarly, Julie Stamper had another comment. She said it explains your question from yesterday. Pasquotank County does still print out paper maps because people love them.
Which county was that?
I'm sorry?
Which county did you say that was?
That was Pasquotank, Julie Stamper.
Oh, okay.
So those are we haven't got any questions in the chat yet. We still have about 5 minutes left. If you guys want anything to ask, please go ahead and do that right now in the chat box. And I'm sure Amanda will be more than happy to answer it.
Yeah, definitely. Or if you guys think of any more questions later, my email is on the screen. Feel free to shoot me a question. We are also on the virtual booth. If you wanted to schedule a meeting that way, feel free to do that as well.
And I'll just add on that you may not have a question now, but you may later. And as Amanda said, you can see your email address there. And also, if you are reviewing this presentation on YouTube, where all the sessions will be from this conference, and you've got a question after you review it, this presentation again, you can go ahead and get in touch with Amanda at that
awesome.
time.
Yeah.
Yep. This every session from this conference and I think from the previous two conferences are all on our YouTube channel. So if you just go to YouTube website and just search NCGIS conference, you can discover our channel there and view all the presentations, full video and audio.
Sweet.
Rich asks, have you considered using a map book function to maintain the various sheets rather than separate MXDs for each map?
Yeah, I was definitely thinking about that for future projects. I was sort of put on this project in not the middle of it, but not at the very beginning of it. So it was kind of already set up. So at that point, we couldn't really change anything. But for future projects, I think using Pro and Map Series, I think that would be a great idea.
Yeah, without a doubt. I've looked at that function a little bit and it really makes things easier.
It really does. I've used it for other projects and it's so simple.
All right. Well, I don't think I see any more questions in the chat. So we'll just wrap it up here and thank Amanda for presenting. And if you have any questions, you can just reach out to her individually. Thanks for attending, everyone. And Amanda.
Yeah,